But first, if you've seen your Sun on Sunday, you'll know what their front page headline is. Claim jihad seekers allowance. Choudary urges fanatics to scrounge for holy war. Well, the Sun have secretly videoed Anjem Choudary giving a talk at Bethnal Green Community Centre, where, among other things, he accuses David Cameron and Barack Obama of being the devil and suggesting that they should be killed. He calls people who do a 9-to-5 job slaves, which is interesting, seeing as he apparently gets $25,000 a year on benefits. He urges Muslims to quit their jobs and live off benefits, or what he calls jihad seekers allowance. He told his audience, "You must hate in your heart." He says we must hate homosexuals. In fact, we must hate a lot of people, according to him, and there was me thinking religion is all about love. Here's a short clip from his talk.
And yet you find that people are busy all the time in that, working the whole of their life. There are some people who wake up at 7 o'clock, they go to work at 9 o'clock, they work 8-9 hours a day, they come home at 7 o'clock, then they watch something haram like EastEnders, and they go to sleep, and they do that for 40 years of their life. That is called slavery. That is modern-day slavery. And then after 40 years of their life, they realise that the pension is not going to pay up anything, the mortgage in the house is not going to pay up anything. Basically, they're going to lose their house, lose their pension, lose everything, commit suicide. What kind of life is that, brother? Honestly, that is the life of a child.
Now, how should we as a society react to Mr. Choudary? Should we respect the fact that he's got every right to hold a view and promulgate it? Should we just ignore him and not give him the oxygen of publicity? Or should we expect him to be arrested under hate crime laws? Your calls now, between now and 11, on 0845 6060 973. Well, Mr. Choudary joins me on the line now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you've been caught red-handed by the Sun, haven't you?
No, in fact, everything that you've said, apart from the clip, is completely false.
So they've made up the quotes then, have they?
Well, they've completely fabricated it, because what you've done is you've played a quote, but the rest of it is lies, actually.
Well, it's funny how the quote that I've played is actually word for word what's in the newspaper. So why should that be right and the rest of the quote's not?
Well, if you want me to explain, I can tell you exactly what I was doing. I was talking about the economic system in Islam, and I was talking about how in Islam, under the Sharia, living in an Islamic state, the basic needs would be provided, and how things would be different, basically, from what we see nowadays in Britain.
Well, if a Sharia state is so wonderful, why don't you go and live in one?
Well, if we had one, I would. But at the current time, 55 so-called Muslim countries, which have barbaric leaders, tyrants, many of them as bad, if not worse, than David Cameron, and they oppress the people. So, we should work to establish the divine law wherever we are. I live in Britain, so I do it here.
How do you think the Islamic Republic of Iran would react if I went to Tehran and made a speech at a community centre calling for Christians to rise up in a holy fight against Islam and that President Ahmadinejad was the devil and should be killed? How do you think that the Ayatollahs would react?
Well, I mean, you're assuming that I was doing that here.
Well, you clearly were. Oh, you're cool.
I was not. You see, Ian, if you want to ask me, I can tell you what I was doing. I was talking about, as I said, the economic system. I was also talking about how somebody becomes a Muslim. Now, one of the things that we do when we become a Muslim is we declare what we call the Shahada. The Shahada basically means that you declare there's nothing worthy of worship or obedience or following except for Allah. Now, part of the clip that you played was to say that entails rejecting everything other than the revelation. And I gave examples of what people worship nowadays. Some people worship idols, some people worship individuals, some people worship their own desires. And as a Muslim, the basic knot or the basic tenet of belief is to reject everything other than, Islam and the Sharia. So, it has context. I wasn't talking about, killing anyone.
Well, did you or did you not call David Cameron and Barack Obama the shaitan, which I understand means devil?
No. No, I didn't. I said that, the definition of what people reject, according to some of the scholars, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is those things that people worship. And I said nowadays people worship many things. Some people worship through obedience, the leaders that we have nowadays. So, I said that is satanic behavior, but I didn't call him shaitan, and I certainly didn't say that he should be killed. So, you've obviously not taken,
well, the fact
if you just allow me, the fact that you take the son and the male as the truth, and you don't want to verify it. I mean, it shows obviously how much you understand the reality of it.
No. I do take what they've said as the truth, because that clip that we've played, they have quoted word for word in their article, and I've got no reason to believe they've made up any of the others.
Well, you have no reason to believe. I mean, these newspapers regularly
sue them for libel.
Ian, that's the kind of thing you may do. But the thing is, these newspapers regularly lie, fabricate, vilify, and tarnish a lot of people, especially the Muslim community. Hardly a day goes by when they don't, whip people up in a frenzy against Islam or Muslims. And then you think it's the gospel truth. So I mean, that shows how naive you really are, isn't it?
Do you deny insulting the Queen? You said there's an ugly picture of the Queen on here. It says, "I promise to pay."
I was talking. Well, what I was doing was I was showing them that the reserves that the Bank of England has don't reflect the currency which is in circulation. I took a £10 note. As a joke, I said, on one side you have an ugly picture of the Queen, on the other side you have this promise to pay. And it was part of a sentence. The fact is, look, the Queen has openly come out in support of the war, for example, against Muslims in Afghanistan. And as far as I'm concerned, her words are ugly, and she looks ugly for me. But I'm sure many Muslims will think that. That's hardly an arrestable offence.
No, indeed. But yet another example of something that you actually admit that you did say.
Yeah, but it was a 3-hour lecture, and the thing is, you see, you haven't heard the lecture. It'd be good if you verify some of what you said. Have you heard me say that I want to kill David Cameron?
Well, I've got the words here. It says,
have you heard me say that? Did you hear me say that?
Let me just read out what it says in the Sun, and you can feel free to deny
about the Sun. I'm saying to you, Ian, did you hear on the clip
the reason that you're on
here... Wait a second. We're living in the real world. You've got listeners. Did you hear that with your own ears, that I said I want to kill David Cameron?
Clearly I didn't, because that wasn't on the clip.
Exactly. So
however, this quote says...
It's a word of a lying
This quote says, well, ultimately do we...
You prefer to believe some tarnished tabloid rubbish, which, you're obviously propagating on the radio.
Let's move on to something else. You say that Muslims, and I think you will admit that you said this, you say Muslims should have hate in their hearts. Why?
Well, the thing is, look, Ian, you obviously have some things you love and some things you hate. We have as well.
I don't have hate in my heart.
Well, okay, I think you have hatred towards me. The point is,
no, I absolutely
don't.
Have
hatred. Well, I think you do actually. But the point is that everybody loves and hates something. For example, people hate, I don't know, Jimmy Savile and pedophilia. People hate, people who are murdering innocent women and children in Afghanistan.
This is where you, on
the other hand, love everyone, don't you? So
this is where you give Islam. This is where you give... Would you mind letting me get a word in edgeways?
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you love Sheikh Osama bin Laden?
No, I clearly don't love him.
What, do you hate him? Or do you think that he was a good man?
I think he was an evil man. What do you think?
Yeah, so you hate him then, don't you? So
I think he was an evil man. Well, I think he was an evil man. Let me ask you a question. What do you think of him?
Well, I think that he was someone who stood up for Muslims. I believe he sacrificed his life and his wealth for what he believed. And I believe in the eyes of many people around the world, Muslims and non-Muslims.
So you love him rather than hate him?
Wait a second, he stood up against the superpowers of this time. He stood up against the Russian
by killing people.
Regime. He was a hero. Wait a second, he was a hero for the British and the Americans.
How can you say he's... Hang on a second. Let me ask you a question. How can you say you love a man when there was evidence that he watched pornography? And according to you, anyone who watches pornography should be hated.
Ian, let's agree about something. He was loved by the British when he was fighting the Russians, right?
That's not what I was asking you. Answer my question.
No, but I'm asking you a question.
Just break the habit of a lifetime and answer a straight question. Can you possibly love Osama bin Laden if he watched pornography?
Okay, well, let me put it differently. He was loved by the Sun and the British and you when he was fighting the Russians. But when the Sun decided he wasn't so good, you decided, well, the Sun's speaking the truth, so I'll hate him as well.
Right.
Is that what the reality is?
So you're not going to answer that question. Okay, well, let's move on to something else.
You don't want to verify, do you? The thing is, I do believe that Sheikh Osama bin Laden stood for what he believed, and I believe he was a hero, and he was my Muslim brother.
Right, well, you think he's a hero. 99% of Muslims in this country, probably more than that, think Osama bin Laden was an evil man, and you give Islam a bad name with your hate-filled rantings.
Well, really, your rhetoric gives away the fact that you do have a lot of hatred in your heart, actually, Ian, and you don't want to verify anything.
I have hatred for all the things that you stand for, because what you're doing is you're promoting hatred against individual people. You're promoting hatred against homosexuals. Now, we have a law in this country that prevents you from doing that, and I would expect, frankly, the police to come and knock at your door soon and arrest you under those laws, because you cannot stir up hatred against homosexuals.
Well, Ian, wait a second. There's something called sanity, and the sanity involves people finding that there's sufficient evidence to substantiate charges, and that's not based upon...
Well, I heard you say it this morning on the radio, that you hate homosexuals.
I said that as a Muslim, we are obliged to hate homosexuality.
Where is that in the Quran?
I said as well.
Where is that in the Quran?
Well, it mentions it about the story of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah. We mentioned in the Quran, and the fact that Allah punished, certain places, certain cities, because of this action. And obviously those cities were not punished because God or Allah loves those people who were committing those acts. But the point is that as a Muslim, we will invite them to embrace Islam. We will invite them to change their behavior. But the point is, this is different from, what you're quoting. I was not saying that anybody should be killed, and I was not,
I suppose we should be grateful for that, should we?
Well, the point is we should...
you clearly thought lots of people in the Twin Towers should be killed.
For God's sake, you're supposed to be a radio presenter. You're interviewing me. You're not actually putting words in my mouth, are you?
No, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm trying to ask you questions which you don't answer.
You're saying a lot of things. You're saying a lot of things which have not been verified. And, when I was talking about Sheikh Osama bin Laden, I was about to say...
You called him a hero.
If you go to Jakarta or you go to Lahore, you'll find that he is a hero. In this country, obviously, the majority of the people are non-Muslims. The point is that around the world, he is a hero.
Well, I'm afraid we must come to an end there. Anjem Choudary, thank you very much indeed. Well, does Anjem Choudary speak for you if you're a Muslim? I suspect not. I'd like to hear from you. 0845 60 60 973 is the number to call. It's 18 minutes past 10.